if you make the justification that Jordan Peterson should be allowed on Twitter, then you have to make the justification that surely Donald Trump should therefore be allowed on Twitter. And then likewise, from Donald Trump, you get to Andrew Tate, and suddenly you start to get into some really very unpalatable people that were previously banned from Twitter for hate speech, starting to have the argument made that they can come back.
Yeah. Donald Trump's Twitter account is up and running again. It was reinstated after the site's new owner, Elon Musk, ran a poll in which users narrowly backed the move. I think it was, in fact, 52% to 48%, approximately. In just a few hours, President Trump's account has received millions of followers. When we came in this morning, which was about, 4:30 a.m., it was at 1.2 million. Now 25 million people are following. Let's have a word with Chris Stokel-Walker, tech journalist and author of YouTubers and TikTok Boom. Chris, good morning.
Morning, Callum.
Just on the follower account, first of all, how does this work when a Twitter account is reinstated? Clearly he had millions and millions when he was booted off Twitter. So do people just automatically come back to him, or what happens?
Well, we understand from Donald Trump and his account and the impact that Elon Musk has been talking about, that actually a lot of his followers became sort of inactive. And so, we have seen Musk tweeting overnight, and this is basically how Twitter public relations works now, is that's how we understand these things. He said that essentially Twitter engineers are working on reinstating those people who followed Trump but found that he was no longer on their following list. So I think that probably we will see that start to build up over time back to its original following count, which was quite significant. Although, of course, whether or not Donald Trump actually decides to come back is another question entirely. He has indicated maybe not.
Yeah, and so it's worth remembering, of course, that he was kicked off after the January riots at the Capitol building in Washington. That is valuable context for us to remember at this point. And tell us more about his, will he come back or will he not? What's our understanding?
Yeah, so Donald Trump has obviously said on Truth Social, which is a kind of competing social media platform that he got involved with after he was kicked off Twitter in January 2021, that he's really not that minded to come back. One of the things that is an interesting wrinkle is that he kind of has an exclusivity deal of sorts with Truth Social, where any post that he makes there has to live on Truth Social for 6 hours before he can then share it anywhere else. So there is that wrinkle. Obviously, Donald Trump is an interesting character. He's someone who is perhaps as, dare I say, duplicitous as Elon Musk in terms of saying one thing and then doing another. So I would imagine that actually the lure of coming back to Twitter would be too strong for him. Overnight, Callum, really quickly, I'm conscious that you probably have the news at some point, but I spoke to a former sort of content moderator for Twitter overnight, just as I woke up this morning, and they said he was banned because he instigated an insurrection. He tried to interfere with the free and fair elections of our country. His return is an example of the growing toxicity and abuse on the platform since Musk's acquisition, and will have serious consequences from our democracy. And that's someone who used to work for Twitter in content moderation, specifically on politics. So this is a big change for Twitter coming up in the next coming weeks, and we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your awareness of our news bulletins. So I'm going to ask you one more, Chris, because it's so fascinating. The flip side of this, of course, is Elon Musk opening up the town square, the public square of free speech and public debate and all of that. And Andrew Tate, the kind of notorious online, I don't even know what to describe him as, YouTuber, influencer typed person who was booted off basically for being quite offensive to many different people. And Dr. Jordan Peterson, they've also been reinstated. So in terms of opening up the public square, as Elon Musk has been framing it, what does this do to, I suppose, if I can put it like this, the feel of Twitter and what it's like to be on the platform?
Yeah, it sets us back a few years. I mean, one of the things, Twitter did have historically these issues around quote unquote free speech, which some people might argue is, I guess, kind of a dog whistle for hate speech. We have seen the bad old days of Twitter where people were abused racially, were abused because of their gender, were abused because of their sexuality and their interests. And we kind of saw Twitter taking a relatively principled stand against that and saying, actually, we do have responsibilities to this. Elon Musk, obviously, kind of an agent of chaos, someone who is keen, I think, to play to his base, and therefore thinks that actually this is something that is okay to do. And I think we do run the risk. You mentioned Jordan Peterson there. You mentioned Donald Trump. I think that we suddenly now see him picking off one after the other, and it becomes a very slippery slope, because if you make the justification that Jordan Peterson should be allowed on Twitter, then you have to make the justification that surely Donald Trump should therefore be allowed on Twitter. And then likewise, from Donald Trump, you get to Andrew Tate, and suddenly you start to get into some really very unpalatable people that were previously banned from Twitter for hate speech, starting to have the argument made that they can come back.
Yeah. It's really fascinating, and it all happens, of course, in real time, and we all tweet about it as it's happening too. Chris, thank you very much. Great to speak to you. Chris Stoker-Walker there, tech journalist and author of 2 books, YouTubers and TikTok Boom.